The night was wet, and Boston streets glistened like broken glass under the lamps. Robert Coyle leaned against his rusted sedan, smoking, waiting. He had always been the man in the shadows. The driver, the courier, the one who carried the risk but never the reward. This time was different. The cops had him cornered. Small charge, easy to bury him for a couple of years. But Robert didn't want to rot behind bars. So he sat in the dark, rehearsing words he didn't trust. How do you sell out killers without becoming one of their victims? The door to the diner opened. Detective O'Rourke stepped out, coat collar up, face stone cold. He walked straight to Robert. "You got something for me?" Robert exhaled smoke, buying seconds. "Names, places, but I want something back." The detective smirked. "You're in no position to negotiate." Robert's jaw tightened. "I give you the crew that's planning the bank hit on Tremont Street. You keep me out of jail." Silence. Just the rain hitting steel. Finally, O'Rourke nodded once. "Fine, but if you're lying, you're finished." Robert's heart pounded. He'd just crossed a line. But as he pulled away from the diner, headlights appeared in his rearview. Too close, too deliberate. A voice echoed in his head. "They know. They already know." The car behind him didn't back off. Robert gripped the wheel, realizing his double life had just begun. And someone was already watching. Robert drove through the narrow back streets, every nerve on fire. The headlights behind him stayed locked, never drifting, never passing. He tried turning left, then right. The car followed. He muttered under his breath, "Son of a bitch." He killed the lights and swerved into an alley, brakes screeching. His sedan slid into the shadows. The pursuing car rolled past, slow, deliberate. Robert held his breath. For a moment, the world was silent, except for the hum of that engine fading into the night. He lit another cigarette, hands shaking. If the crew suspected him, he was a dead man walking. But he still had a job to do. The next day, Robert met with the gang inside an abandoned warehouse by the docks. For men, all muscle, all scars. Their leader, Vince Caro, towered over him. "You got the van ready?" Vince asked. Robert nodded. "Parked 2 blocks from Tremont. Full tank. Plates switched." Vince's stare was ice cold. "You sure you're with us, Coyle? Lately you look nervous." Robert forced a smirk. "Nerves keep you sharp." The men laughed, but not Vince. He leaned closer, his whisper like a blade. "Don't forget, Bobby. In this game, trust is everything." Robert's stomach turned. He wanted to tell them the truth. He wanted to run. But the plan was already moving, and once it started, there was no turning back. That night, Robert sat alone, staring at the gun on his table. He whispered to himself, "Play both sides, or get buried by both." Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. A voice, low and cold, filled the line. "We know what you're doing, Coyle, and we'll be waiting on Tremont Street." The call cut. Robert froze. Someone inside had already marked him. The morning of the job came heavy with fog. Boston streets were quiet, but Robert's pulse was loud in his ears. He sat behind the wheel of the van, engine humming, while the crew loaded their weapons. Vince slammed the door shut. Everybody knows the drill. In and out. No mistakes. Robert forced a nod, but his palms were slick with sweat. He knew the cops were waiting. He also knew the crew suspected him. One wrong move, and he'd be dead before the first siren wailed. The van rolled to a stop outside Tremont Bank. Masks pulled down. Guns drawn. The doors burst open. Chaos erupted. Shouting. Screaming. Robert stayed in the driver's seat, engine roaring, eyes darting between the bank entrance and the rearview mirror. He saw shadows moving across rooftops. Police spotters. It was happening. Then gunfire. Sharp. Fast. The crew stormed out, dragging bags stuffed with cash. One of them shouted, "Go! Go! Go!" Robert slammed the gas. The van fishtailed into traffic, horns blaring. Behind them, sirens screamed to life. Bullets shattered glass. Robert swerved hard, nearly clipping a cab. Vince barked, "Lose them, or I swear, Bobby, I'll put a bullet in your skull myself." Robert gritted his teeth. He wasn't sure who was closer to killing him, the cops on their tail or the men inside his van. As they tore through the south end, Robert spotted a roadblock ahead. Dozens of cops, rifles raised, waiting. His heart stopped. The deal with O'Rourke had been real. They set the trap. But Vince didn't know. And if he figured it out now, Robert was finished. Robert's foot hovered over the brake. Every choice led to blood. The van thundered down the street, tires screaming against wet asphalt. The roadblock loomed ahead. Cops crouched behind cruisers, rifles steady, ready to fire. Robert's breath caught in his throat. This was the moment. Vince roared from the back, "Don't stop, Bobby! Smash through!" Robert gripped the wheel. His chest burned. But before he could choose, the first shot cracked. Glass exploded. Bullets tore through the windshield. The crew roared back, rifles spitting fire out the side doors. Shell casings clattered on the floor. The van became a coffin on wheels. Robert ducked low, his knuckles white. Jesus Christ! One of the crew caught a round in the throat, collapsing in a spray of red. Another leaned out the window, screaming, "You'll never take us alive!" The van plowed straight into the barricade. Steel crushed. Sirens wailed. Officers scattered as the vehicle slammed through, sparks flying from shredded metal. Robert barely kept control. The van fishtailed, smoke pouring from the hood. He could feel Vince's gun barrel pressing against the back of his neck. "You slow down, you die. You hear me?" Vince hissed. Robert nodded, throat dry, eyes fixed on the ruined road ahead. But inside, his mind raced. The cops knew he was their rat. The crew suspected the same. And in this storm of gunfire, there was no place left to hide. The engine coughed. The van stuttered. Robert knew it wouldn't last much longer. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw it. A black unmarked car sliding in behind them. Not cops. Not cruisers. Something else. Someone else was hunting him. Smoke poured from the van's hood as Robert floored the gas. The engine whined like it was screaming for mercy. Sirens howled behind them. But that black unmarked car stayed closer. Too close. Vince snarled, "Lose the cops, Bobby. Now." Robert swerved hard, nearly flipping the van. The crew inside slammed against the walls, cursing, reloading. Gunfire cracked again, bullets punching holes through the rear doors. One of the men leaned out and fired back, sparks lighting up the fog. But the unmarked car didn't slow, didn't flinch. It just stayed on their tail like a predator. Robert's gut twisted. "This ain't the cops," he muttered. Vince snapped his head toward him. "What did you say?" Robert shook it off, eyes fixed forward. "Nothing. Just hang on." The van shot into Chinatown, neon lights streaking past in a blur. Civilians scattered, screaming as the chase tore through the narrow streets. The unmarked car pushed harder, ramming the back bumper. Robert fought the wheel. Another hit, harder this time, made the van lurch. The crew screamed over each other, panic rising. Then, from the rooftops, muzzle flashes sparked. Automatic fire rained down. Not police. Too precise. Too controlled. Robert's stomach dropped. This wasn't just a botched robbery. Someone else wanted them dead. Someone who knew exactly where they'd be. Vince fired through the shattered window, shouting, "Keep driving, Bobby. Don't you dare stop." Robert's eyes flicked to the mirror. The black car stayed locked on him, weaving through the chaos with surgical precision. Whoever was inside wasn't after the money. They were after him. The van screeched around a corner, sparks flying as metal kissed brick. Robert's arms ached from wrestling the wheel, but it didn't matter. They were boxed in. Ahead, two cars swerved across the narrow street, blocking the way. Behind, the black unmarked car slid into position, cutting off retreat. From the rooftops, more shadows moved, rifles glinting in the haze. The crew inside the van exploded in panic. "We're trapped. Light 'em up." Gunfire ripped through the night. Rounds tore into windows, into walls, into flesh. Robert ducked low as bullets chewed the dashboard. His ears rang. His chest hammered. Vince roared, his voice shaking with rage. "Bobby, drive through. Smash 'em." But Robert couldn't. The van was done. Smoke poured from the engine, the tires shredded. The beast had taken its last breath. The crew kicked open the side doors, spraying bullets in every direction. Figures in black tactical gear emerged from the shadows, moving like ghosts. Silent, precise. Not cops, not feds, killers. Robert stumbled out, crouched low behind the van. His hands shook as he raised his pistol. He wasn't aiming at anyone, he was just trying to stay alive. The air turned red with chaos. One of the crew screamed as his body was riddled with rounds. Another tried to climb a fire escape but dropped in silence. A single shot through the skull. Robert's mind spun. Who were these men? Why did they want this crew dead? Then Vince grabbed him by the collar, shoving him against the bullet-riddled van. Spit flew as he screamed, "You set this up, didn't you? You little rat." Robert's eyes went wide. "No, Vince, I swear." Before he could finish, a flash grenade exploded. The world turned white. His ears filled with a deafening roar. He felt himself thrown to the ground, blinded, choking on dust. And as the smoke cleared, Robert saw through blurred vision. One of the masked gunmen was standing over him, silent, rifle aimed straight at his head. The masked gunman stood over Robert, rifle aimed between his eyes. Robert's chest heaved. He whispered, almost begging, "Don't do this." The gunman hesitated. Then, a shot cracked from somewhere else. The man above Robert jerked, collapsing lifeless beside him. Robert gasped, rolling onto his stomach. Gunfire roared again, but this time the attackers weren't just hitting the crew. They were hitting each other. Shadows moved against shadows. Two factions tearing each other apart in the haze. Sparks. Screams. The stench of blood thick in the air. Robert crawled beneath the smoking van, ears ringing. Through the chaos, he caught a glimpse. One of the gunmen ripped off his mask, barking orders in the fog. It wasn't some faceless merc. It was Detective O'Rourke. Robert's gut froze. The cop who promised him protection was here, leading the slaughter. Vince staggered nearby, bleeding from his shoulder, eyes blazing with fury. He shouted over the storm, "You filthy rat! You sold us out to the feds." Robert shook his head, desperate. "I didn't know. I swear, Vince, this isn't what I—" Another explosion ripped the night. The warehouse walls shook, bricks raining down. The last of the crew either dead or running blind into the gunfire. Robert crawled toward an open alley, coughing smoke, body trembling. But before he could escape, a hand grabbed his collar and yanked him into the shadows. A new voice whispered in his ear, low and razor-sharp. "You think the cops are your problem, Coyle? They're nothing. The people paying for your head. They're bigger than you can imagine. Robert twisted, eyes wide. But all he saw was a mask and cold eyes staring back. The voice hissed again. They don't want the money. They want you. Robert staggered through the alley, ribs aching, vision blurred from smoke and blood. The masked figure shoved him against the wall, pistol pressed under his chin. Robert croaked, "Why me? I'm nothing. Just a driver. A nobody." The figure leaned close, voice low and cruel. "You were never nobody, Coyle. You were the witness. You saw things you weren't supposed to. Deals. Faces. And now you're the loose end." Robert's mind raced. The cops wanted him silent. The crew wanted him dead. And whoever this masked faction was, they wanted his head as a trophy. He rasped out, "Then why not kill me now?" The man smirked behind the mask. "Because O'Rourke still thinks you're useful. But when he's done, we'll take what's left." A burst of gunfire cracked nearby. The alley filled with sirens and shouts. For the first time that night, Robert saw an opening, chaos, distraction, a chance. He slammed his head forward, breaking the man's grip, then drove his shoulder into him. The pistol clattered to the ground. Robert grabbed it, hands shaking, and bolted into the street. Blue and red lights blinded him. Police swarmed, rifles raised. Someone shouted, "Drop the gun!" Robert froze. O'Rourke stepped out from behind the cruisers, calm, smiling like a wolf. "You did good, Bobby, but it's over. Hand yourself in and maybe you'll live another day." Robert's pulse thundered. He looked left, shadowed alleys. Right, more cops. Behind, masked killers regrouping. Every path led to death. He raised the pistol, torn between choices. Shoot O'Rourke and go out in flames. Surrender and become their puppet forever. Or run blind into the dark, hunted until they finally catch him. Robert took a trembling breath, whispered to himself, "Trust no one," and then he moved. The screen cut to black. Gunfire echoed. His fate, unknown.